My Lords, I beg to move the motion standing in my name. It is an unusual motion, the last very much more far-reaching and far more prescriptive example being a motion introduced by the noble Baroness, the Leader of the House, personally in 2019. Frankly, my Lords, it is in many ways an undesirable motion. It really should not be left for any other party in this House to have to ensure that time is given for a government to be held to account, a point made very vehemently by my noble friend Maud Deben. My Lords, it's the duty of a Leader of the House, who, by the way, we're all very pleased to see survived a vicious night of the long knives in the Labour Party. It is the Leader's duty to enable scrutiny of government policies. And while the noble Baroness has survived, may I say, while I'm up, how sad we are to see so many outstanding ministers in this House: the noble Lord Timpson, the noble Lord Livermore, the noble Lord Vallance, felled with his whole department, as we've just heard, the noble Baroness Lady Chapman, and so many others leaving the government. My Lords, we thank them all for their service to the House and to this country. Now, my Lords, before anyone gets too excited about all this, let me tell the House that all this motion asks for is that the new government should allow a short take-note debate to answer to Parliament tomorrow on their policies. There'll be no vote. Nobody's holiday will be interfered with, whatever the Captain of the Gentleman's is telling people afterwards. My Lords, it is an opportunity for the government to set out the policies of which the noble Baroness Anderson, has just said they are so proud. And if the noble Baroness, the Leader of the House, tells the House she will give adequate time for debate and scrutiny in Parliament on the new government strategy and all its new announcements tomorrow, and indeed all this week, then I can withdraw my motion. My Lords, these are unprecedented circumstances. Only once before in the whole of British history, in 1963, has a Prime Minister taken office who didn't put himself before the British people at the previous general election, and what is more so during a recess of the House of Commons. All recent Prime Ministers taking office in similar circumstances have made themselves available to Parliament. Contrast that with the new Prime Minister's convenient entry to number 10 on the first working day after the Commons had adjourned for the summer recess, and the unseemly finagling of changing Commons business to deprive the opposition of our scheduled Opposition Day debate for fear we might vote for the House of Commons to sit this week and hold the Prime Minister to account. Now, having suppressed scrutiny by the Commons last week, is this now to be followed, my Lords, by imposing a whip? I thought we had heard that Mr Burnham didn't like whips to suppress scrutiny of the government in this place. It looks as if the Prime Minister, my Lords, is bending over backwards to avoid telling Parliament what his plans are. But yesterday, outside Parliament, while Parliament was sitting here, he declared grandiloquently that he would be, and I quote, a circuit breaker for Britain, bringing forward the biggest changes in the last 40 years, a new political model. A new model, incidentally, which includes putting someone who resigned on propriety ethics issue in charge of propriety and ethics, and someone who resigned over a housing issue in charge of housing. My Lords, I have heard of thumbing the nose at the so-called establishment, but there are points when it can look a little rich. Now, the Cabinet met earlier today to discuss the government's new ideas. The noble Baroness was there. So can your Lordship's House, can this Parliament, sitting here in this place, not be told the barest outline of this new political model, the new economic model, and the 10-year plan? For example, will tax overall go up, or will it come down? Will welfare spending rise, or will it be cut? What is the fiscal strategy? Already, my Lords, the government has talked or briefed outside Parliament about cutting energy bills, lifting the personal tax allowance, nationalising Thames Water, the biggest council house programme since the war, giving mayors more funding, creating a national care service, more overseas aid, cutting student loan repayments, more employment support and ending homelessness. Yes, my lords, but where is the money coming from? They're not so noisy now, my lord. They're opposite. And can the noble Baroness shed any light on all this? Can she say which of this list are commitments and which just backstairs smooching of the media and, it seems, some backbenchers? After all, she was there in Cabinet this morning. My lords, the ministerial code is absolutely unequivocal. It states, and I quote, "When Parliament is in session, the most important announcements of government policy should be made in the first instance in Parliament." Why has that not been happening? My lords, we need statements here, and we need answers. I ask the noble Baroness on behalf of the whole House to ensure that happens. Where, for example, is a statement on ending rough sleeping, which has actually risen in Manchester in the last few years? And the media have been told this morning that the government will pause VAT on electricity, ironically by using our Brexit freedoms. I thought Mr Burnham wanted to end those freedoms, my lords. Why was this not announced in Parliament before the media were briefed? We haven't even seen written statements on these announcements, though I gather one on VAT was issued moments ago while we were considering the PNQ, and I wonder how many members of this House have had the opportunity to see it. I echo what the noble Lord Deben said. Sir Ed Davey, no less, said the VAT pause was not the best way to help people and doesn't go far enough. Well, you can discuss that. Isn't therefore this an issue for questioning and a short debate, an opportunity for noble lords to put their point of view? Where is the explanation of how this will be paid for? The press have been told it will be paid for by scrapping digital ID. Well, good riddance to that, my lords. But the former Chief Secretary to Number 10, Mr Darren Jones, has this morning said that the digital ID programme was unfunded. He sat in Cabinet with the noble Baroness until last Sunday morning, running the Prime Minister's office. My lords, he should know whether it's funded or not. So how do the numbers add up? Shouldn't your lordships be able to question that in a short take-note debate tomorrow, which is all I suggest? We're told there'll be more policy announcements made to the media this week. Will the noble Baroness ensure full compliance with the ministerial code and see that each and every one is also made here first, in the first instance? And in the absence of that, agreeing this motion would grant your lordships time tomorrow to question and debate what the Prime Minister says, I repeat, are planned to be the biggest political and economic changes for 40 years. My lords, we are a house of scrutiny, and I think it is reasonable that while we are sitting, we should be afforded a modest time to do our work and question government. Surely it would be a quite extraordinary position for government to order its backbenchers to vote this motion down on the basis that they don't yet know, or they don't want Parliament to know, what Mr Burnham's plans are. Did hundreds, my lords, of Labour MPs and peers really flock waving their selfies to greet the Prime Minister without even asking what he stood for? My lords, I say again, the ministerial code requires ministers to come to Parliament and make a statement regarding new policy announcements. Now, the noble Lord Purvis of Tweed said on the Chagos bill, and by the way, the former Attorney General, who I'm pleased to see in his place and was summarily and harshly sacked along with many other friends of Sir Keir Starmer. Will the Chagos bill, by the way, now be buried? But on that debate, the noble Lord Purvis of Tweed declared in April, and I quote, "Scrutiny and accountability. These are issues these benches have focused on relentlessly." We shall soon see how relentless the Lib Dems will be today for parliamentary scrutiny and accountability. My Lords, scrutiny and accountability are the essential functions, the rights and duties of your Lordship's House. So I hope the noble Lord will be true to his words today and be relentless with the government. Currently, my Lords, we have government by continuous press conference and media spin. That isn't what this great House has ever believed in or should readily accept. In this unprecedented situation, the government should answer in detail and with details to this part of Parliament that is sitting. I hope the noble Baroness Leader, when she replies, will set out a reasonable programme of how she'll ensure that is done this week, including a short take-note motion tomorrow. If not, then I reserve the right to submit this motion to the opinion of the House. That the Executive is accountable to Parliament is the most basic and dearly bought principle of our free democracy. It must never be bypassed, and I beg to move.
The question is that this motion be agreed to.
Opportunity also to welcome the continuation in their role of the Leader and the Chief Whip. I also thank... I apologise to the Chief Whip if I've just doomed his chances the shuffle. But now all of his backbenchers are keeping a beady eye on their phones as to the fate of the noble Lord. I also thank, on behalf of these benches, the outgoing ministers for their service. They were open, accessible and often responsive, and we thank them for their service and we wish them well. And for those ministers that will be either reappointed or newly appointed, we wish them luck in their role. On more occasions than I can remember, the noble Lord, Lord True, has said that this House functions on the basis of a degree of respect among the usual channels. He has said it is a fundamental of how this functions. We are a House of minorities, after all. He's reminded us on many occasions, if the usual channels break down, then the House does not function as it should. My Lords, I think this brings a new meaning to the whip is off. Today's motion was highlighted not in the usual channels at all. The government was not informed or consulted. My benches were not. The crossbenches were not. The usual channels were ignored. If you consider the usual channels to be the fundamental principle of how this self-regulating House operates, why is it just today that the noble Lord believes that they should be summarily ignored? Either consulted, informed, or written to. Now, on the basis of being written to, peers across the House were this morning written to with a letter from the noble Lord condemning the government and making announcements outside Parliament first. With a superpower level of irony, that letter was released to the press last night at 9:38 p.m. When these benches were asked by Sky News last night for a comment on Lord True's letter, my immediate reflection was to say that no, this could not have happened. And in fact, colleagues were not written to. I didn't receive a letter, so obviously this wasn't the case. Sky News then pinged on the X. I will happily give way if she wishes to correct the record.
The noble Lord just correct the fact that I spoke to both the Government Chief Whip and the Lib Dem Chief Whip last night well before 9:38.
My Lords, the noble lady is well aware that there are recognised ways that the usual channels operate. She may protest. My Lord, if she wishes to intervene again, I'm happy to take her.
My Lords, I am not protesting. I am stating a fact.
My Lords, I indicated that these benches were not consulted, we were not written to, with regards to the noble Lord. And that is perfectly clear. Now, when the press were told at 9:38 p.m, when the House was still sitting, that there was no convening of the usual channels to discuss the business ahead. I wonder if the noble lady might be able to confirm. She can intervene on me again. Was there any meeting of the usual channels last evening when we were still sitting?
I can absolutely confirm that I discussed it with both the Government Chief Whip and the Liberal Democrat Chief Whip. And, my lords, we don't generally convene as a three. We speak separately and together, often.
My lords, it may help the House. I think by the time the noble lady spoke to the Chief Whip, it had already been tabled, and we'd been alerted it had been tabled.
It's the usual channels. It was not convened, informed or written to. And indeed, when we were notified that a motion had been tabled, that is not the way that the usual channels operate our business. I wonder if the noble lady might be able to confirm the point that the leader indicated. Had the other benches been informed...
Very convenient.
My lords, the Chief Whip might be able to confirm whether, if the opposition Chief Whip might be able to confirm, it would be helpful to inform the House whether the motion had been tabled before she informed those that she claims were consulted. No, there's silence. I think that confirms that matter. So we now debate a complaint. We now debate a complaint about announcements being made outside Parliament first, which itself was an announcement made outside Parliament first. Setting aside the nature of this for one moment, it's probably worth noting that when there were 3 Conservative Prime Ministers in 3 years, and I checked Hansard, there were no debates in this House on the political priorities and legislative agenda of each Prime Minister when they took office. In 2022, with Liz Truss coming to office, she appointed the noble Lord True to be leader of this House, and there was no debate. Now, I don't blame him for not scheduling a debate, because there wasn't enough time in her period of office in order for us to debate this fully. And I'm very happy. My lord, I'm very happy to give way to the noble lord.
If it cuts short the noble lord's speech, which seems to be an attack on this side rather than any kind of examination of the other, in the case of Mr Johnson went immediately to Parliament and answered questions at great length on his programme. In the case of Liz Truss, she went and did Prime Minister's questions within 2 days and gave full account to Parliament in the proper way. The same thing happened in the case of Rishi Sunak. What is different in this case, and the noble lord can tell me if there is no mechanism by which Mr Burnham has allowed himself to be examined by the House of Commons or be properly accountable to Parliament.
My lords, as Hansard will be able to say, I indicated very clearly that there was no debate on the government's priorities, both political or legislative, in this House, which the noble lord is seeking that we do. Now, it is his right not to be consistent. I understand that, but when it comes to my lords, when it comes to whether or not Prime Ministers are seeking to avoid scrutiny, then I think all of us remember that it was Prime Minister Johnson who prorogued Parliament specifically to avoid parliamentary scrutiny, and that was deemed illegal. Now, in pre-issuing the letter about the debate, we also need to take note, because I don't think that the noble lord had been consulting with some of his colleagues in the Commons, because much of this motion now seems to be a bit out of date. The Conservative-chaired Public Administration and Constitutional Affairs Committee conducted an inquiry into government announcements made outside Parliament, and it reported and given considerations on the 9th of January. It said that the code was out of date, given modern media considerations, and needed clarity. I quote from the report in paragraph 40. It said, "The media environment has changed significantly in recent years, and the provisions on the need to make the most important statements of government policy to Parliament first have remained substantially the same since the code was introduced in 1997. It may well be the case that this section of the code needs to be modernised to reflect Parliament first principle, but also recognising that governments must seek to communicate their policies effectively to the public they serve. That was the Select Committee in the Commons, chaired by a Conservative MP who made that recommendation. The government published its response on the 4th of June, accepting the recommendation, and indeed has stated that the code will be revised. That the Noble Lord's motion is out of date. The Conservative chair, Simon Hoare MP, said that he welcomed the government's acceptance to amend the code to be more flexible on announcements given the new media environment, and said, I quote, "It has been clear for some time that the current situation regarding the ministerial code and major policy announcements is untenable. It is refreshing to see that the government has shown it is willing to adapt the code in a way which ensures it is fit for purpose." So the letter that the colleagues received this morning is substantively out of date. And I'm sure that the Noble Lord True will wish to speak to his Commons Conservative colleagues to have an ongoing debate about how the code will be amended. Now, my Lords, notwithstanding that we do seek an opportunity for there to be proper consideration of the political priorities and legislative agenda of the Burnham Premiership. So far, we've noted that the new Prime Minister has said, but we've regretted that there are major omissions, such as real action to fix the crisis in social care, reduce the crippling burden on businesses, that's wrapped up in Brexit bureaucracy. And we do need a real clear direction on major reforms to our body politic, as tinkering, and at the edges will not do. Now, when we return in September, in the first week, there is Labour business time, government time. It is fully appropriate that after the summer, when we've seen all of the raft of announcements by the new Premier, that this House does debate, does provide scrutiny, and can hold the government to account for the announcements that it's now making. And I hope the leader will respond very positively, that when we return in the first week in September, we will have appropriate opportunity for us to take into consideration whether the new Prime Minister's priorities are whether the... if you will forgive me, I'm just... Well, by really popular demand, I shall give way to the Noble Lord.
I'm very grateful to the Noble Lord for giving way. This is an historic speech on his part. This is probably the most momentous missing of the point since the crowd called for Barabbas to be freed. Am I right in thinking that the Liberal Democrats will not vote for greater scrutiny and will decide tonight to let the government off the hook because their attachment to their friends in the Labour Party is greater than their commitment to democracy?
It's not exactly Churchillian to ask for a take-note debate. I mean, we will take note of them on the beaches. We will take note of them on the landing grounds. We will always take note. Was not the speech that I think the Noble Lord might be thinking we lead to. My Lords, I think we've taken note of enough from that side.
Just rise. My Lords, let me just rise briefly to make a pertinent point, a single point, quoting the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister wrote to Labour MPs on the 8th of July, setting out his approach to how he wanted to treat Parliament. He said that ministers would respect the House. I presume by that he meant ministers would respect the Houses. He also said in his email that he wanted to see us do politics differently. He said, I don't know why they're laughing over this, is your Prime Minister said he wanted to see politics done differently. He said he wanted to see more consensus, which means working together to debate the policies of the government, and he wanted to see more of a partnership approach from the government treating Parliament properly for both policy and legislation. Now, we can judge parties by their words, and Prime Ministers by their words or by what they do. Those were fine words, but we're going to judge the government by what it does. If it chooses to absent itself from scrutiny whilst one House of Parliament is sitting, then we will know that those were just words and that the Prime Minister has no intention to do politics differently, has no intention to take Parliament seriously, doesn't respect the House of Lords, and we will draw our conclusions and behave accordingly. There's an opportunity for the Lord Privy Seal to demonstrate that the Prime Minister's own words to Labour MPs had some meaning, and for her to make a generous response to my noble friend Lord True, enabling him to withdraw his motion, and for us to debate the government's policies, which appeared to be popular on the other side, to answer questions, and we can do that this week when this House is sitting, and I look forward to what she's got to say.
Well, my lords, first of all, can I concur with the noble Lord True and thank those ministers who have served in government and who have now left government. Their service has been exemplary, they've all been dedicated and hard-working, and we're grateful for their continued support and wish them well. And can I also welcome the fact that my noble friend, the Chief Whip, has been reappointed. It's not necessarily the greatest secret of the House at the moment, but we look forward to working with him, and I look forward to him as well, and thank him for his comments about my reappointment to the Cabinet. My Lords, at the start of this session, in the King's Speech, as group leaders, we pledged and we spoke of a reset, returning to our usual ways of working in a collegiate and a productive way that best benefits this House and the work that we are entrusted to undertake. And as a matter of clarity, I know the Chief Whips have spoken outside. The motion yesterday was tabled, I think, at around 5 p.m. I then later went down to see the noble Lord, the Leader of the Opposition. When I first tried to speak to him, I was told he was unavailable to speak to me, though within a few minutes, I think he realised that wasn't a good idea. He did come down. I'm grateful to him for that it wasn't, as he knows, the most productive conversation.
For clarity, I had no knowledge that the Leader of the House had been told that. And of course, as soon as I heard that she had been told that, I came immediately down to the corridor as she's just acknowledged. There was no question whatsoever of my refusing to see the Leader of the House on any occasion.
I'm grateful to the noble Lord for that, because I was told by his office that he was unavailable to see me at that point. I did say that he then came down to see me, so I'm grateful for clarification that he wasn't involved in that decision by his office. But it was tabled at around 5 p.m, and as the Chief Whips agreed, it wasn't actually any discussions with the usual channels until about 9:30. And given 9 o'clock. And I have to say, given what was said, and we all agreed how we would say this when we had the King's Speech, I was a bit surprised, and I say I was disappointed, that there was no consultation, no discussion, no engagement, or even notice from the noble Lord. There was no request for a statement. There was no discussion to say, oh, have we got any plans this week for a debate? Would we like to do that? The first we knew about it was a motion being tabled. There was no attempt at all to seek to address the concerns the noble was raised in any of the ways that we committed to do so when we had the debate on the King's Speech. I have to say to noble lords, I really thought we had made some progress then. And as the noble lord said, business motions moved by the opposition is not unprecedented, but they are extremely rare. Only twice in recent history has the opposition attempted to take control of the order paper in this way, and very much opposed then by the noble lord opposite. Lord Richard did it in 1996, about 30 years ago, in response to the Scott report. I did something similar in 2019, reflecting a motion that has been tabled in the House of Commons in relation to Brexit. And my lords, those bad-tempered days of debate, I would hope that none of us would want to return to those. Fortunately, and particularly fortunately for the party opposite and the noble lords and his predecessors, this has never happened before with the change of a Prime Minister. My lords, I completely agree, and have always committed to this, that the House should be given ample opportunity to scrutinise the government. But my lords, in politics as in life, patience is a virtue. This is day 2 of a new Prime Minister. The government is still being formed. We saw an appointment just now. And of course, we will welcome scrutiny, and ministers will come to this House and Parliament will do its job in scrutinising the work of the new government. But, my lords, this motion is unnecessary. It is not the way this House does business. There has not been extensive policy changes at this point, and the Prime Minister has committed to move forward on the basis of the manifesto that this party was elected on at the 2024 election. Now, this morning, an issue raised by the Noble Lord Leader of the Opposition, the Prime Minister announced a targeted intervention on VAT to help with the cost of living. Today, a written ministerial statement was laid to update the House on these matters. A topical oral question on Thursday relates to these matters. And in the autumn, Noble Lords will have to scrutinise the regulations that give effect to the policy. My Lords, that's hardly dodging scrutiny. I've also laid a written ministerial statement today to inform Parliament of the machinery of government changes that have taken place, and my noble friend Lady Anderson of Stoke-on-Trent has answered a P&Q on the topic. My point is, my lords, that the scrutiny of government is continuing. We have a number of bills before us which also deserve scrutiny. Oral questions will be asked, statements will be repeated, and yesterday an exceptional number, I think 10, private notice questions were tabled. General debates will take place on Thursday, and we will continue to lay written ministerial statements as required. If this motion were carried, we put at risk a full day of business tomorrow, and we put at risk continued scrutiny of legislation that this House presumably considers important. My Lords, the Prime Minister has been very clear. He takes Parliament seriously. And I can tell the Noble Lord, no, it's no good the party opposite making those comments. On day 2 of a Prime Minister, I'd like to have a considered response from my new Prime Minister and the House fully debate and properly debate when he brings proposals forward. And my Lords, as a parliamentarian myself of nearly 30 years, on the front bench, in government and in opposition for over 25, I hope Noble Lords will recognise my commitment to the work of this House and to scrutiny of government. And rest assured, we will not seek to evade or avoid scrutiny of our government's policies, because we will be proud of those policies as they are drafted and brought forward for further discussion. And I have to say to Noble Lords, this Prime Minister did not set the timing for the change of leadership. The Prime Minister did not set the timing for the recess dates. And in fact, the Noble Lord tabled his motion yesterday. He's known for some time now. It's not exactly been a state secret when the new Prime Minister was taking office. My Lords, procedures like this should only be used in rare and unprecedented times. The party opposite has ensured that a change of a party leader between elections is certainly not unprecedented. My Lords, I urge Noble Lords not to accept this motion today. But, whatever the outcome, can we just rise above some of the rancour today, which I think was unnecessary? And I wish all Noble Lords a restful summer recess, and I look forward to further scrutiny in September.
Lords, I reciprocate the noble Baroness on the last words that she used, and of course I wish that to all members of this House. I mean, this House works extremely hard, and it certainly merits the time that it will have off. And I also agree with her. I said at the outset of my speech that these things are exceptional. The noble Baroness put forward a motion of this kind at the time of the debate over prorogation, which was pretty well unprecedented. As I explained in my speech, it is unprecedented, apart from in 1963, for a change to take place of this kind when the House of Commons isn't sitting. And that is the case for your Lordship's House being given the opportunity to debate these questions. My Lords, I do value good relations with the noble Baroness, and if by that incident or anything else that she's been disobliged by something I have sin of commission or omission, then I apologise for that. My Lords, if I can return to the debate, of course, We had 10 minutes from the noble Lord Purvis of Tweed. I don't really know what he was on about for most of the time. He certainly wasn't relentless for accountability, my lords. He's as relentless as a limp rag when it came to criticism of the government. I did think he certainly fell below the standard of the time. So far as the party opposite is concerned, my lords, and I will conclude not with this, I ask, what are they so worried about? A short 3-hour debate tomorrow, it won't interfere with any holiday plans. Mr Burnham says he wants to bring back hope, my lords. That must be more than admission of the hopelessness of 2 years of Keir Starmer, his government, and its huge toll on business and jobs. It must be an expression of confidence, as we've heard from others, that his policies are better. So why are they so afraid to debate them here in Parliament? Now, my lords, when the time is right. This House is a house of scrutiny, and I believe we should assert our right to be informed and to be heard. And therefore I beg to test the opinion of the House.